We have the same exact access on North Devon Avenue, so there will be no new curb cuts on Airmont Road. The same exact driveway configuration that's out there today will remain. As you can see, the layout is very similar to what's out there today. The really main difference is we are demoing that breezeway and providing that drive-through component to the building. The existing friendly is 4,169 square feet. Again, our new building is 4,429 square feet, so a slight increase in building floor area. Overall, the entire property, including the Howard Johnson Hotel and our new Panera, will have 180 spaces, whereas 159 spaces are required, so we are compliant with your parking standards. The hours of operation for Panera from Monday to Saturday will be 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. On Sunday, we open an hour later and we close an hour earlier, so from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Overall, we'll hire about 20 to 25 new employees that will be on there for about 2 different shifts. Our site is delivered by various box trucks and 1 tractor trailer that will stage in the bypass lane to service the new Panera. We do have a brand new trash facility that will be also operated by a private hauler. In regards to the new site improvements, again, because the site is already developed and kind of existing today, there's not a lot of new site work that you'll see. All the utilities that service the existing friendlies, they will be cut, capped, and reconnected with our new laterals that will service the new building. Landscaping, there is some out there, but we are enhancing it in the proposed condition. 4 more trees and 161 more evergreen shrubs. One of the comments in your professionals' letters were to increase that surrounding the parking area, and we'll be happy to do that. Lighting is also, there's various light poles that are out there. We are adding 2 more area light poles that are near the drive-thru lane, and there's a host of different building mounted lights as well on the building. Overall, that's generally the layout. It's pretty straightforward because of how much is existing out there today. And really the last exhibit I want to provide you guys, which we presented at the Architectural Review Board, are the 4 elevations of the Panera. So the top one you see is the south elevation, has the 2 signs, Panera Bread and the drive-thru. This is facing Devon Avenue. The west elevation, which is the second tower feature, this is facing Airmont. And the last 2 elevations, to the east, this is where the drive-thru lane will be stacking. This is facing the interior Howard Johnson. And to the north, this is facing the railroad and then the thruway behind it. This is where a drive-thru window is. So as you can see, all 4 sides of the building have brick. They have yellow fabric awnings. We also have aluminum and glass on the front tower feature. Overall earth tone colors. I believe at the Architectural Review Board they were generally happy with how everything was laid out from a building standpoint. I know we'll get into signage as part of the second application. I do have separate signage exhibits for you, as well as a material board if you really are interested in that. But I think the more important part of this first application is answer any questions, comments, concerns you may have associated with the Panera. I talked about the site plan. The subdivision, which I think is the second major component of this application. Panera is a contract purchaser. Rattan Hospitality Group is looking to sell a piece of this property, and we're looking to provide just a straight boundary line that splits both. There will be cross-access agreements, so that whole site operates as one. There will be cross-parking agreements, so the whole site operates as one. And say, should someone come out of Panera, miss the first driveway, they're allowed to go through the hotel, exit out the second driveway. As you know, down Devon Avenue, the only thing back there is that residential development, so we anticipate majority of our people coming back to service onto Airmont Road.
What percent of the Panera Bread have drive-thru?
So,
I've never seen one.
Majority of them probably today still are the inline and shopping centers and some of the downtown urban features, but I work corporately for them. They are moving every one of their existing inline stores to a front pad, every single one, other than the urban downtown environment. So we've done a few of them.
As of today, what percentage have you?
I don't have that exact number.
I mean, ballpark, is it 50%, 5%?
It's not 5, I would say it's more 30 to 40%. So they are slowly moving out from the inline shopping center space to this front pad area with the drive-thru component.
The one in around 17 is a drive-thru.
It was the one in Central Valley.
Yeah.
It was not in one in Ramsey Square, though.
No, not Ramsey
No.
Square.
17 north.
Yeah, way down there. Well, not way down. In parameters.
They call us upstairs.
Okay, any other questions from the board members at this time? So who's actually gonna own that piece of property after you subdivide? Is
Well,
it Panera?
hopefully
or
with
is
the
it-
approval of the subdivision, Panera Corporate will own the land as well as the building. So if there's no other direct questions, I can go through the review letters. I don't know if you guys go through your review letters, whatever you prefer.
Usually, okay, do it.
Yeah, sure.
So let's go ahead.
Okay.
So this is a subdivision that is requiring variances, which, according to subdivision law of the village, they would have to request those variances before any approval could be received. We just want to make sure that we understand that Rattan Management Group would be requesting the area variances for that lot, since Rattan owns the property currently, correct?
They do, correct.
So they would be requesting the area variances, and I think, I don't know where
Dan just stepped out. What you're saying
so
is
we'll come
nice.
back to that, but I
Okay.
just wanna understand at what point area variances, who has to receive the area variances, and then who would then receive, variances attached to the use of the building. So, you're proposing a fast food restaurant on a site that is less than 2 acres.
Correct.
Per your site plan, that would be a variance on the site plan, not necessarily the subdivision.
The
So
site
it's
plan for the restaurant.
Right,
And
right.
then any variances attached to the hotel would
Right,
have
would
to be a
have to
site
be-
plan for the hotel.
Exactly. So it's just to understand the procedure.
And that'll be before the zoning.
That is all before the zoning board, yes.
Understood.
But since there is a lot of zoning issues and those all need to be dealt with before your approval, we wanna make sure that we understand the process. And the planning board will need to issue, this is an unlisted action, so they will need to issue a negative declaration per seeker before the zoning board can give any kind of relief from those variances, so, understanding the application right now is important. So some variances were addressed, and some I felt were incorrectly addressed as variances and should have been waivers. A litter receptacle variance was requested, but I believe that is a planning board waiver. And the arrangement of outdoor seating, that is also a waiver.
Okay.
Yeah, and so with the outdoor seating, the provision discusses if there's outdoor seating on a public walkway
Okay.
that is less than 6 feet, then it should be more than 6 feet. So I just wanted to understand if the seating is closer than 6 feet to the parking lot, then it would require a waiver.
Is it,
Thank you.
Where's this outdoor seating gonna be?
The outdoor seating, I was just
At the
coming over,
front.
is the front facade facing Airmont Road, and you see some tables, chairs, umbrellas, and you have a small row of shrubs to buffer it before you get to the access aisle.
So the provision talks about providing 6 feet of space between the eating area and any kind of parking lane movement, vehicular movement access.
I think there's 5 feet. It's a major concern of the board. I can shrink the patio area by be compliant with that design waiver. The reason we weren't ignoring the regulation, really what happened was we're trying to keep the existing limits of pavement and curb line. So as we walked in and then you dropped on our Panera building, we were left with this approximately 16.5 foot wide area for patio. So if it's a major concern of the board, we can certainly increase that, we'll say buffer between the parking aisle and the patio by 1 foot to 6 feet. I think it's de minimis in nature, and the intent is there with that landscaping row, but if it's a concern, we can certainly comply from that and drop the design waiver from the application.
Right. And that would be a planning board waiver, so that's.
And what would be the barrier between the seating and the parking lot?
Right now, there's 5, it
Shrub?
would be increased, it would be just a shrub, and it's higher, it's 6 inches higher than the access aisle. The full height of a curb.
So you couldn't run out from a chair into the parking lot, correct?
You'd have to go through landscape and then it drops 6. And there's also like a small railing around the patio area as well.
The proximity difference, the one closer to the.
Similarly with the litter receptacles, there is a calculation for litter receptacles. Typically we would just have them kind of discuss how their waste management would work. And Lou is pretty good about holding them accountable for the waste.
Yeah, the number seemed pretty low, right?
It does
Because
seem-
code was
right.
25 and you're proposing 5.
So, yeah. So what we would like to see is anywhere where people might be walking to, we would want to see a trash receptacle. So if they're walking to their cars, we want to see trash receptacles at each entrance, and maybe at the corners of the parking lots.
So, designed various commercial site plans throughout the year on a host of different style of applications. 25 trash receptacles in there is a lot for any kind of use, in my opinion. We thought 5 was appropriate to service this. If you guys are looking for 10, there's obviously plenty of room spread throughout the parking area and the sidewalk to provide them. I think 25 is going to look like there's one every 5 or 6 parking spaces. So I think tonight I'm still going to seek the design waiver from you guys, but if there's a number or if you're professional, say, you know what, we can add a couple more, we're happy to provide that. But at the end of the night, I think you are doing that design waiver.
Well, I guess what I see sometimes is, you know, you have this number and then if you go to the Wendy's over here, they got those receptacles way in the back,
They're
by the
far away.
woods.
Right,
No one's used them in years and it looks like they're ready to fall apart.
right.
So I guess we gotta kind of balance, let's make sure it looks aesthetically pleasing and, you know, it doesn't look like the thing hasn't been used since it's been put in. So as long as they have some kind of a reasonable proximity to where people are going, I think the board members would be okay.
And a little different item too, where
You what?
I don't think there's any place to hide on that lot.
Hide.
Yeah, there's
With
no.
the trash receptacles?
Correct.
Right,
Everything
they'll be
is
visible
very
from the
much
road.
visible.
From everywhere.
Right. Although we are encouraging more landscaping along the Airmont Road side of the parking plaza, so that would, the parking lot, so that would be a little helpful. But I think you're right. I think we're looking for some kind of middle ground, just making sure that anywhere people are, there's.
Well, again, honestly, when I'm talking at the end of the night about trash receptacles, I'm doing my job. Right? Whichever number you guys are looking for, we'll provide. I think
We're gonna leave
25.
that up to our consultants.
Absolutely.
Alright,
Okay.
I'll have to look at the site plan again and I'll give you a number.
Okay.
There you go. Unless someone wants to give us the number.
So we have a couple of comments on the EAF.
25.
You noted them. And typically we'll fill out the Part 2 EAF as the lead agency. Should you wish to assume lead agency, we did prepare a notice of intent. And once that EAF has been completely filled out per our comments, we can fill out the Part 2 and send it to the applicant, and they will address any kind of impact concerns that we have. The proposed project is located within 1,500 feet of the school or hospital, which is one of the items on the EAF Part 2 that would need to be checked off. I also noted that the parking plan doesn't match the traffic study, and it doesn't seem to match the total that are required.
So, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm just looking for clarification on 9, where I think there might be just a slight discrepancy on how you got to your total. So the fast food restaurant requirements
Right.
is 69 spaces, total requirement, based on our project.
Right.
And then, I'm sorry, I'm gonna back this to the board. The hotel requires 90 spaces. So 69 and 90 gets you to 159 spaces
Okay.
required, and then the overall site provides 180.
Okay. I think I may have misread the hotel site requirements. But make sure that the traffic study,
We'll make sure that's
It's
updated to
updated.
match that. We are parking compliant. If there's any error in that, we'll make sure that typo is fixed.
sure.
I have a question about the traffic study.
Mhm.
Is that contracted for by the applicant or the board?
The
Um,
applicant did the.
Correct. The assessment that was provided by the applicant. Generally, when we submit site plan drawings, we try to provide some kind of parking assessment, traffic study assessment. Yes.
Trying to remember back in the day, but I thought usually the board picked the consultant to do the traffic study.
That's
We're
the
not-
consultant that would represent the board. So the
Correct.
applicant would pick their traffic consultant, and the board has an option to retain a traffic consultant should they determine it's required.
if you don't, yeah, so the applicant provided it just as part of the overall application for additional data. If it's not necessary, we could leave it out of the overall application, but we thought it would be helpful to
Always
your
necessary.
profession.
Yeah, I actually think that we've received comment that a more robust study may be necessary. And so that would be up to the board to determine. Just a couple other planning notes. We had discussed a pedestrian connection from the existing sidewalk on North Airmont Road.
We can add that.
Thank you. And a couple of just pedestrian friendly signs around the drive-through for not blocking the crosswalk from the Howard Johnson to the Panera, and another sign indicating that the circulation lanes should not be blocked by traffic for the drive-through.
Like do not block
Do not
the box.
block, yeah, don't block the box, exactly.
We could do that as well.
We talked about landscaping. And we'll talk about, I think we'll probably talk about county GML in a minute.
That was a nice letter.
Yeah, it was really understanding.
Did you want to ask the question when Dan stepped out?
Just, we were wondering about the order, since Rattan Management owns the lot to be subdivided, Rattan will need to go for variances, for area variances, and then there will be site plan variances for each site. Right, so the
Right, so you have a subdivision, and then a site plan for Panera, and a site plan for the hotel. So we're not seeing a site plan for the hotel yet.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Right. So,
Procedurally, and I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Obviously, here on behalf of Panera, they're eager to do
Correct.
this aspect.
Yes.
They're also, after the secret process and, recommendations, one, that the zoning board, for any variances that we have associated with our potential subdivision, I assume.
Yeah, but it's not just your subdivision. It's a subdivision of the existing lot,
Right.
which would affect both of the two new proposed lots. Both lots
Bless you.
So,
would need variance.
Correct,
And
and-
actually, the zoning legend does break it out
Correct.
on the table,
right,
but it's not, there is not a separate site plan for the hotel similar to what we have for the restaurant. So it would simply be another sheet, really, to define what's remaining on the hotel site. So they have provided the information, but not completely.
So Panera has instructed us to seek those variances. Obviously, the owner is selling this portion of the property, so he's aware and has approved us to proceed with seeking that relief at the zoning board.
Okay,
For both of
other
those
than
variances.
the removal of the breezeway,
Mm-hmm.
are there any other site changes, improvements, etc., for the what would be the hotel site?
No.
Well, just
Well, there
a
needs to
slight
be.
modification to the sidewalk.
right.
And the addition of a coffee shop.
Which
That's
I assume-
internal,
Well, he said the site plan,
Right.
right.
yeah.
So I
That is
I
a
think our
condition.
plans show any and all modifications that would be made to the hotel. If we
Mhm.
need a separate sheet, we'll certainly happy to prepare that, but I think from a general comment, Panera is taking the lead, I would say, in the subdivision. I agree with you, those variances are applied to the hotel property now, but we have been contracted to seek those variances, if that's okay with the board. Rattan Hospitality will not most likely present before the zoning. When I'm presenting before the zoning, it won't just be for the Panera variances. I'll be there to justify also the hotel.
So they've granted you the ability to represent them in the application?
Correct, because
Okay.
should the subdivision not be approved, the deal cannot proceed
Mhm.
because the land would not be bifurcated and sold.
Mhm.
Is there documentation necessary to show
Yes.
that?
Yeah, they'd have to
Right.
have everything
I would need something.
I could
from
certainly do that.
Rattan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They would
okay,
need to sign something, have it notarized and send it here,
okay,
authorizing you to do that on their behalf.
And list all the aspects, the
Yes.
variances, the site plan, the subdivision.
I do believe when we filed,
Mm-hmm.
the May one may get pushed based on procedural requirements because of secret and everything, but in that application, we filed all the variances
You
that are
did.
associated with the subdivision
Mhm.
as
Talking
well,
about the permission of the property owner for you.
to seek
To
those
seek
variances.
Mhm.
So I assume a
On the-
letter from his counsel authorizing would be sufficient? Or like a contract of sale, what Just looking to see what you would need paper-wise.
Typically, an affidavit, notarized affidavit from, someone in a corporate capacity that has the authority to do it for the hotel group.
Now remember, it's Rattan Hospitality is just the landlord. He doesn't operate probably the Howard Johnson. He may, but the permission, I believe, comes from
Or the property owner.
The property
Property
owner.
owner.
I was gonna say, who filled out the application and had it notarized? It starts with an N. Raj on his name.
correct. So we needed ownership signature.
Correct.
On that's my point. I thought we provided that. If we need additional documentation, we can certainly do that. The application, we needed ownership signature and then Panera as the applicant. So the owner has obviously approved this application that's here before you tonight.
Question out of left field on this.
Sure.
If you did a 99-year lease or something like that, how many of the variances would go away? Most of them?
It's a great question. A decent amount would.
And your approval would be a lot faster.
Completely understand where you're coming from. We
Yeah,
have
all of the variances would go away. Except for the hotel issue.
so
That's not really fair.
I'm happy to tell you what I'm going to
Somebody
say to
went through
the
the
zoning board. I know I need your blessing to get there. The property is for sale. The owner wants to sell this property. When the first two CDRCs that we went through, your professionals, the goal was not actually to sell it. They were talking about potentially condoing and some other things. Both the ownership and the buyer just could not come to an agreement. We have to go and look for this subdivision and purchase. From a planning and engineering standpoint, whether your professionals agree with me or not, this line that's splitting these two buildings, in theory, will not change any aspect of the site. Although I agree you're now going to have variances because we have this line that is arbitrarily between them. It's not like this line will somehow generate a more intense development. It's not going to generate more parking or traffic. That really you're swapping out the Friendlies, putting on the Panera, and they're asking for the subdivision line for ownership purposes.
But it does change though when other applicants, different applicants come in and say, well, you gave it to them, why don't you give it to me?
I believe every application stands on its own, and although people are afraid of precedent on future applications, I think every application has to stand on its own because of the uniqueness and particular suitability of the property. This line that is going to be drawn in the sand between these two buildings will not have an impact on each other. It's operating like that today, as you can see from the aerial. So I understand it's now tied to the Panera, but it would be the same burden of proof if maybe someone wanted to come and just open up the Friendlies again and draw a line between these two buildings. A lot of people are afraid of subdivision when you have under lot areas, and now all of a sudden you're thinking of more intense development. You take a 4-acre property, put 4 lots on it that's an acre each, and that leads to more development, more buildings, more parking. You don't have that situation here. The one line that splits these two buildings is the same. It's the same development. So that's going to be the argument for the zoning board, is that this particular subdivision, although yes, creates these host of, say, a couple of variances with lot as well as the building setbacks, the buildings are there today. That's the argument. Again, whether you guys agree with me is a different story, or even your professionals, but that's the thought behind this. Is this 4 acres, if it were to split up different ways, could have yielded different uses in different buildings. And I know the purpose of a lot area requirement is so that you have larger development maybe in the zone. The development is all staying the same.
That's assuming the hotel property doesn't change, but then at some point.
If the hotel property, if that changes, they'll have to come before you guys as well as the whole development process. That's why the application I said was it kind of stands on its own. If they wanted to change into anything, residential or another style of commercial development, they would have to come before you and go through the process that we're going through now. You may not like the fact that if they come later with something that the more intense development would be suitable for their size situation. We believe that this subdivision line has no impact on how this development works, and has no change in impact on the surrounding roadway or our neighbors around us. Restaurant to restaurant, generally the same overall layout. You're adding is that drive-through component.
It may be possible for the hotel to increase coverage or developmental usage without seeking variances. However, it wouldn't impact how the entire situation looks.
So just to give you more data on that, the existing property is only 51% impervious coverage today, and you're allowed up to 75% impervious coverage. So splitting this lot again into two different shapes doesn't increase the yield I could put on the property. Today, still, I could add more parking on, or more pavement, more building area on both of these lots, because we're underneath the impervious coverage limit. So putting that line here or here doesn't change the overall development yield on this tract. It's the same area at the end of the day.
But you're moving an agreement for parking, for instance, cross parking, I believe.
I don't think the subdivision necessarily even comes into play with that. We would have to have that agreement anyway. Like your planner mentioned in her review letter, there's 48 spaces around my Panera, but your ordinance says we need approximately 60. I already need this to operate as one site so that we are parking compliant as well as different access points. The intent of this application is to have the entire site operate like it is today, but with an open and successful business. Again, we are adding the drive-through component, but it's to bring a new operating successful restaurant here.
Let me ask you a question. Based on what you just said, you need additional parking by using the hotel parking lot. Am I correct?
Based on your ordinance.
Okay.
Panera
So,
does not
hold
need
on, hear me
60.
out,
Go
hear
ahead.
me out. Because I've seen this happen before. If a new owner purchases the hotel site and comes in with a new plan, they're still bound by that agreement.
Correct.
But they can say, you gotta park on the other side of the hotel. We haven't agreed to a specific area where your restaurateur's client can use the parking. So, yeah, we've agreed to a number, but we haven't agreed to an area. So they could force you, unless we put some mechanism in place here, in the future, to put you in an area that becomes completely impractical for the people who are going to Panera to be able to park.
I respectfully disagree, and I'll explain why. That cross-parking agreement is not going to say you can only use 10 extra spaces or an area. The cross-parking agreement is so that both property owners, that their patrons, can use any parking spot on both sides. So if the hotel owner comes in, knows check-in is...
Depends on how that agreement is worded.
And I agree. And as the owner of the owner of Rattan Hospitality Group, in order for him to sell this portion of the property and for Panera to sign and proceed and build, there has to be that agreement. The same way
But do you,
Go ahead.
what, I'm trying to make sure we're on the same page. The agreement can be written very simply without accomplishing the actual goal. If it's just, you have a cross easement agreement to be able to utilize 30 parking spaces
I wouldn't like to put a
on this
number-
property.
I wouldn't like to put a number to it, because Panera doesn't need, I understand it's your ordinance requirement, but Panera isn't banking on them needing all this parking over here. Panera, their sweet spot is 45 to 50 parking spaces. That's why the site design is left like this. We're only at 46% impervious coverage on our subdivided lot. If Panera truly needed 60, 70, 80 parking spaces, we would have added that on here, and there's open space.
Yeah, but they could come in with a completely different design in the future, which could, back up to your Panera building and completely block out the existing parking, proposed parking, however you want to characterize it, with their new building, so that all the parking is on the other side of the building, and making it completely impractical.
Yeah, theoretically, they absolutely could. In the same way, the devil's advocate argument is someone who was using the hotel isn't going to park in these front 18 spaces on North Airmont. It's a blanket easement. It allows patrons to
But
operate
that-
like this is a full
Okay,
site.
but we're trying to be practical here. They're gonna, most people aren't gonna say, you know what, I'm gonna park as far away from where I wanna go as possible.
Of course.
Okay.
That's why we think that 48 spaces is
But
plenty.
that's looking at it, you know, today, taking a snapshot of today and what exists on the hotel site today. Nothing prevents a future owner of that hotel site from coming in with a brand new plan
Mhm.
saying, we're not parking here, we're putting a building here.
That's absolutely
And
feasible.
Then we have the untenable position where they could say, we comply with all we comply with all your zoning requirements, we're just shifting the building this way, and we're putting the parking, you know, further away from Airmont Road, there's a benefit in doing that.
And honestly, we would be okay with that, because we don't believe we need any more than
Yeah,
our
but
40.
from a planning perspective, if you need 50 of those parking spaces and they make it so that your patrons have to walk, you know, 2,000 feet to get to them,
I can't testify on theoretical design that I don't have before me. I understand your concern. My opinion is, and I've done various Paneras before that are now going to drive-through, they don't need more than 48 spaces. I understand your ordinance says they need a little bit more, but Panera is a successful operation with many stores across the country. They don't want their patrons to be walking a couple hundred feet away from
I'm
the
saying
hotel.
that they won't have control.
In the
I
event
think
that
both
it
property owners
becomes
will have control.
problematic, it seems as though he could add the parking spaces, I think is what he's.
But I think it's better planning not to, because you're swapping out a Friendly's vacant restaurant to a new Panera. I could add more parking, but that's more impervious coverage, less.
I'm not even going there. I'm suggesting that when
She
it
was
comes to any agreement that you make with the owner of the site with regard to parking, that it's clearly defined where the parking area is so that it's closest to your Panera.
Will you review that once they draw it up?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but they won't put an area to, why would the hotel owner put an area to it? Because does that mean that someone who's from the Panera parks over here, they're in breach and then they're gonna get towed? That the idea is for this to operate like one site. And forgetting the subdivision for a second, let's assume the subdivision doesn't go through and Panera still wants to be here and we come back in 6 months and we're doing this again. It's gonna be the same discussion that I have 48 parking spaces around this building and I'm testifying that I believe that is sufficient for them. Your ordinance says 60, and that means that we have to be compliant with parking standards. You have to analyze this entire site, but this site is designed to act like one. That's why we have driveways to service the middle of both parking areas. That argument of, in my opinion, that this is operating by itself could have a ripple effect beyond parking. What about loading? What about truck circulation? Are we going to delineate exactly where the trucks go? The intent of this is to act as a pad in a hotel property. That's the intent. So although I definitely understand everybody's concern on where people will be parking, I don't think there's going to be an issue with where people park, because you show that the entire property is parking compliant, over parked compliant actually, where 159 spaces are required for the hotel and Panera. We're providing 108. So even if Panera customers decide to start parking over here, we're advising that there's 30 extra spaces on that hotel property to service and still be compliant with the hotel. The hotel ordinance parking standard is high, in my opinion. You have 88 rooms here. Generally, it's one per room plus their employees. Your ordinance asks for 150 spaces, which is plenty, in my opinion. So I definitely understand your concern and respect it. I don't believe that either owner is going to, the buyer and the seller is going to agree to say these 10 spaces. I think they're going to say blanket parking.
I really don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's my main point is one of the most important functions of planning board is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. And if there is a situation where people, you know, in the future have to walk a great distance through a parking lot to get to the Panera. That may not be the safest, way to, operate.
Sorry, I want you to know I'm not trying to argue, I just want to put in perspective commercial site plan development. Although the shopping center is closed, how many large shopping centers have rows of 200 or 300 parking spaces? And when they're busy, like the Walmart that's on Airmont Road, I'm sorry, Route 59, and you're parking in the back during busy time, you're walking up that. We don't anticipate that, but even this area, you can see this big, when it was open and successful, this whole parking area is filled. So part of commercial site design, I agree with you, you need to make sure it's safe and it's not a unsafe condition, and I don't believe that there will be an unsafe condition. I actually think this is one of the better plannings that you have here, because we just testified that you can do more parking here. We could have seeked a driveway on Airmont Road, completely cut off the hotel. I actually think it is better planning to have shared parking, shared easements, less impervious coverage, more landscaping area, and that traffic is centralized on the lawn where you could have queuing instead of worrying about more complex on Airmont. I actually think this is the better style of planning than separating and worrying about total number of parking spaces to each, personally. And any new application for the hotel property, regardless of what it may or may not be, is going to be under the same scrutiny. And if they do rotate the building, move the parking closer to the residential, you guys may not like that you're moving more parking closer to the residential, or maybe a more intense traffic use is coming there. I think I can only really testify to what's before you tonight in front of the board. But any easement that we have between both will provide for you.
Speaking of easements, there's a O&R utility easement that the county caught.
Yeah, there's a, if you go out to the site today, there's large overhead poles that are along the,
Okay.
Along the back.
so you,
Okay. But anything you're proposing underneath those poles is movable, correct?
yes, so, there was a great comment that they were asking about, the comment in the review letter was, there's a utility easement that runs along the whole back portion where there's existing pavement and trash facilities there. Obviously, we're redoing some pavement and adding trash enclosure. Is that allowed? Sometimes it's not allowed if you have underground piping and everything there, but these are overhead wire lines, so as long as it's not a building, you're allowed to put site improvements there, because if they ever needed to, you could be removed.
Right. I know O&R wants to be reviewing plans these days, so the county had requested that you send that in to them if they're prepared to look at it.
It's no problem.
They also have a criteria that you don't raise the grade under their lines, and they're not changing the grade.
Correct, we are keeping the same grade of the parking area.
Did you have additional comments, Eve?
I have a letter.
You sure do.
Yeah, if you're done, I'll jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I think a lot of the things have already been discussed. I believe you should all have the letter I wrote today, earlier today. I can reiterate a little bit of it from the first page. I think we've discussed it in detail, but again, the subdivision with 2 site plans, we're gonna clarify that the current applicant for Panera does have the right to represent Rattan as well for the hotel site. It is a special use permit, and there are a number of sections under that special use requirement that we've discussed. Essentially, the drive-through lane and the cafe and the trash receptacles. Going on to the second page, just a housekeeping item, our school district name has been changed. Number 2, we talked about the cross-access easements. I think we talked about that in detail. But I do want to note that our code allows and encourages joint facilities in section 210-49C. We actually encourage arrangements such as the one that's before you now. Number 4 was regarding a loading zone. Apparently the site was approved back in the day without a loading zone, and testimony has been offered that the loading will take place in the bypass lane. If you could just advise us, what time do you typically have deliveries made? Do you feel that it would interfere with circulation at all? if you could provide a bit more testimony on why you feel a loading zone is not required, that would be helpful.
Certainly. Two types of deliveries, box truck style, those come more frequently. The larger Panera tractor trailer that will come, they're only coming in a couple times a week. So they'll come off peak hours, they're not gonna come during your peak rush hour periods. They will only come during open and operation hours. They don't come overnight when the cafe is closed. They will come off of Airmont Road down to Vaughan, pull straight forward and stage in the bypass lane. Again, the bypass lane should be in the drive-through, and you decided you don't want Panera, you want to go somewhere else, you would then bail out and go to the bypass. It also allows for truck circulation as well as fire truck circulation. So, in essence, that bypass lane acts as a temporary loading space for the 30 to 35 minutes that it's there a couple times a week.
So when they unload the trucks, then it's going to go across the drive-through lane into the building?
Correct. Every Panera drive-through operates like that. Every loading zone, they don't do loading zones, they do this bypass staging. It stages there, there's a crosswalk, there's a delivery door in the back, and that's where they go to the coolers and the kitchen area. Some of the box trucks may the parking spaces and go through the front doors, depending on what they're delivering.
Is that before normal business hours, or is that during?
All during business hours, correct, when the store's open and employees are there.
The tractor trailer that goes in, does it circle back around?
It does, and part of our civil set, we have a truck circulation plan that shows that. I can pull that out for you.
You know, the one in Paramus, it goes in, then just turn right back, comes back the same way. That's what one Paramus in Palisades, in West Virginia.
So sheet 21 is our truck circulation plan that shows the Panera tractor trailer entering the site, staging in that bypass lane, circling around the Panera, and where we're showing that it can go through the hotel and then back onto Vaughan to go back onto Airmont Road, probably to the thruway to continue.
Where's the delivery door on that side?
Right there. So that little quarter circle, that's the delivery door. And that's why you have a little ramp and a crosswalk.
It's in the same path as the drive-through.
Yes, sir.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They certainly.
I've seen some close calls with the Panera in West Nyack, so that's.
So the truck couldn't make a right behind the hotel?
No.
Make a left and go around?
It's going to make a left, correct. That access aisle is a little tighter back there, and if it was a real concern of the board, we can open up that radius, but the intent was to minimize disturbance and keep as much as existing out there today. Improve what we can, but you have a nice wide access aisle around the Panera that it can circulate around. Again, just to remind the board, it only comes once or twice a week for 30 to 35 minutes, so 3-4% of the time that the business is operating.
I'll continue with the letter then, if that question has been answered. Number 5 was regarding a new water service. I was wondering if you had the opportunity to confirm this with Suez. We've been seeing a lot of hot boxes being required, especially for commercial sites, and they tend to pop up in front yards unexpectedly and overnight. So if you could plan ahead and
We could certainly do that.
determine if you need one, which I think you may, and put it in a place where you can buffer it a little with landscaping, that would be greatly appreciated. Number 6 is regarding the sanitary sewer lateral. I see that you are putting in a new lateral on site and tying into the existing one that stubs out to the street. I was wondering if you did investigate that yet to see if it's viable, since the restaurant has been closed for so long, to make sure it's still in good condition.
Not yet, but we would be happy to condition upon approval that we would TB, and anything that wasn't up to your standards, we'd be willing to replace the entire lateral up to the main, should it not be up to standard.
That's great, thank you. 7 and 8 are referring to the stormwater management system. A few years ago, and I'm thinking maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Lou, you may have a better memory, the upstream property started to have issues with flooding in their ponds, And when we traced it downstream, it was because the maintenance in these swales in the front yards wasn't exactly up to par.
Okay.
So I just wanna stress that those swales have to be maintained. The pipes, I believe there was, one of the outlet pipes was actually
Little buried
halfway
in.
filled, right.
Hmm.
So that stuff has to be cleaned out,
That'll
the
be part of
inverts have
the-
to be reestablished.
That'd be part of the stormwater maintenance agreement that we
Correct,
provide?
yeah, well,
Okay.
the work will have to be done during the site plan aspect, and then you'll be under stormwater maintenance agreement
Okay.
to ensure that it works continually. And the owners, each respective owner,
Mm-hmm.
so we will need a stormwater maintenance agreement from Panera and also from Rattan, since they will be two separate lots. So the owner of the hotel property has to understand that they'd be obligated to sign one as well.
And just for refreshment of memory, would there be one currently on the property that maybe not being
I don't believe there
No.
is any
Due to
because
the
the approval
history.
was, yeah,
for the previous municipality?
was granted long ago.
Okay.
Way
and-
before the
It's
state
not on my
even
list.
had stormwater management.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Okay.
But I'll send you the agreement, so
No
you have
problem.
it.
I believe Adriana spoke about landscaping. I'm pretty much reiterating the same concerns about screening the vehicles on North Airmont Road in DeBorn. Lighting plan, you did mention that the lighting, you are adding a few, I believe you said 2 new poles,
Correct.
and then building mounted lighting.
Correct.
If you could provide more of a comprehensive plan, especially along the driveway, even if it's to go out and measure the existing lighting
Do like an
there.
as-built study of the
Exactly,
existing-
just so we see the lighting levels coming off the Bourne, because in my recollection, it was dark, but it may have been at that time that a bulb could have been out. I haven't been there recently to double check.
Okay. We're also happy to condition that should the as-built survey show that it is deficient and you were looking for a relamping of the new pole, we'd be happy to provide that as well. Panera obviously wants a well illuminated property.
Correct. And that's all I have, thank you.
Will it be lit 24 during all night hours?
So I know we'll talk about this in signage. The signage turns off generally an hour after closing. The majority of the area light poles will be turned off after 1 hour after the store closes. The lights at the driveway will still stay illuminated, and there may be 1 or 2 emergency lights based on your building department or fire department asking around the building. So there will be some light on the property for security purposes, but after the cafe shuts down, majority of the light shuts off.
And lighting should remain on in the common aisles between the hotels. The
I would agree
hotel
with
is
that.
24/7,
Mm-hmm.
so the
So actually,
shared
you may-
access should remain illuminated.
So you may actually have in a few area light poles that
Right.
look like they're lighting up the Panera to operate. So that's a
So,
concern.
correct, it
Yeah.
should remain on for the hotel use.
Right.
So really then your building mounted lights would turn off, your signage would
Mhm.
turn off, but the area light poles around the access aisles as well as the driveway would stay on.
Okay.
What's the thinking of having the sign illuminated an hour after closing?
It's just a standard, to be honest with you, that it's an automatic timer. When the cafe closes, it
Well,
doesn't mean.
this could be set for any time.
Well, hold on, I'm getting there. When the cafe closes, doesn't mean every employee is leaving as you take your last cup of coffee and sandwich and leave the door. That last hour is really for the employees.
And I understand that, but the employees don't need the sign light on it.
Correct. If that's a major concern, we could discuss that.
I think it's just could be misleading people. So, oh, it's still a sign.
That's true too.
Till they pull in and there's nothing there.
And the door's locked.
Mhm.
Okay, any questions on each comment? All right.
Any other questions about Panera?
Rudy, have anything?
drive-through?
Everything I have has already been addressed. They're quite
miracle.
extensive.
What about the GML? Is there anything interesting that's new in here?
So do you wanna discuss the sign plan? Should we do that?
We didn't
Or
get to
GML
all the
was
letters either.
Yeah, we gotta go through the correspondence.
Yeah.
For the site plan specific?
And I did not get all comments from a number of agencies.
They seem
I
to
didn't
be
get it from environmental health, I didn't get drainage, I didn't get the village of Montebello, they were all sent,
The
but
way
nothing
authority.
came in. Which is unusual for drainage and environmental health. Might be because of the holiday, I don't know.
I have all the review letters here, I could breeze through them. I would definitely say that the more important ones were the two we just went through, but, Town of Ramapo, they said, on April 11th, no comments. Rockland County Highway Department, they had 2 comments asking about traffic signs as well as a road opening permit will be required. We'll certainly provide and comply with both of them. I'll go through the Rockland County one in a second. We did get an email from Shlomo, the fire and safety inspector. I believe there were comments. I could try to address them. If you want, we can go through each one. It was more of just those of us who live, work, pass through the village are very familiar with the traffic at the intersection of Route 59 and Airmont Road, as well as North Airmont Road and Route 59 and Thruway, especially during travel peak times. Period. No traffic study was provided for the intersection of 59 and Airmont Road, nor Airmont Road, Devon, and 59. Period. Panera at CDRC stated that they intended to draw customer mainly from local areas and not from the Thruway. Period. North Airmont Road from the Thruway to 59, as well as the 59 corridor from east to west through the intersection of North Airmont Road, are the main routes for emergency vehicles responding to Good Samaritan Hospital, as well as emergency on the state Thruway. Period. With the discussions and possibilities of the old Grand Union site being redevelopment, traffic in this area will become further stressed. Happy to answer any questions, comments that may come from this. I agree that obviously Airmont Road has traffic on it. I do agree that the Thruway, there's traffic. Devon Avenue, it's lightly traveled. And again, we're going from a Friendly's, although closed, I agree, theoretically could be turned on, and you have a similar sized building coming in. So I don't believe that there's a major traffic increase that would be associated with this project. This is just my general comment. The old Grand Union being redeveloped, that's another applicant's burden, in my opinion.
I have a question.
Yes.
Friendly's did not have a drive-through, whereas Panera will have. So traffic is then.
I believe it's a different blend, in my opinion, where Panera is not like a fast food restaurant. When you go to a Wendy's, Burger King, or a Popeyes, you get fed the full menu instantaneously. I think the majority of Panera's customers go in, you get the little buzzer, you sit down, and you stay at the cafe for a little while. Sometimes, you disagree?
No, I do, because it's similar to a fast food. There is enough service being given at the drive-through.
Oh, I apologize if I wasn't being clear. Yes, they provide their full menu at the drive-thru, and it will be handled quickly. That's why they're titled a fast food. My comment was 100% of their business is not quick turnover, 30, 90-second orders. I believe a lot of Panera's customers, and that's why we call it a cafe, sit in the cafe. There's a lot of high tabletops, there's couches, people bring in their Wi-Fi and their computers. My comment is, I think more people at Panera will stay longer, similar to a Friendly's that has maybe a waitress-style sit-down restaurant. So people are in the cafe longer than a typical fast food restaurant. I agree with you that the drive-through component will handle the higher turnover, but I do believe that is a similar use because people sit and stay at Panera versus, I think, maybe a Chick-fil-A or Wendy's, you're in and out a lot faster.
If you're in the drive-thru and you're ordering something that takes 5 to 10 minutes to prepare, how does that work?
So I don't know if it takes 5 to 10 minutes, but let's say it takes a little longer. Panera Operations watches the drive-thru. Right now we have 7 to 9 car stacking capability. Say all of a sudden it gets to 6, number 7. The person at the drive-thru will ask that person in front of them, say, your order is not ready. It'll be ready in the next minute or two. You can pull up to one of the spaces that are delineated in front and wait for that extra minute or two. It'll be out to you shortly. That way there will never be a stacking problem outside of the drive-thru lane.
When you came before the Architectural Review Board, you mentioned there would be one spot for that purpose. Is that still the case?
Correct. So there's a couple of different delineated spaces. One is called Rapid Pickup, which I think we'll talk about when we talk about signage, because that's one of the signs. Rapid Pickup is when you order through an app, you come, you park in that space, you walk in and your food is actually in like a library space. The other kind is the drive-through signage. Give me 1 second. Just want to count how many. There will be one drive-through signage stripe. So, right in front of the drive-through exit, there will be one parking space that will have a sign in front of it that says drive-through. That's your waiting spot. Should there be peak time, 8 cars stacking, and they don't want this obviously to start backing up, impacting the site, the last thing to move forward.
definitely see that about 6 o'clock during the week. We'll get quite busy.
We hope to be successful, but listen, the Panera operation knows their business as well, and I represent others, like say Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A has 22 to 26 cars stacking in their drive-thru. If Panera had that big of a demand, we would certainly be required, as per their corporate standards, to provide that big of a drive-thru. So I definitely understand your questions. They're great questions. Their operation is designed so that there is not an impact to the site.
So what is your, during the, I guess, the busy hour, what is your mean or what's your mean and standard deviation on number of cars in the drive-thru?
Actually, our biggest drive-through time is actually during the lunch period. And when we talk about, say, traffic and other things, you really care about the morning rush, the afternoon rush, and then that Saturday rush. Panera is still a heavy lunch crowd, although we provide breakfast in the morning and coffee. Our business is just a little different. Most people end up going to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts in the morning to hit that coffee drive-through. When people come to Panera, they're typically getting the coffee and a sandwich. And a lot of times people will come into the cafe. So our peak time is actually the lunch crowd.
So what's the mean number of cars waiting?
I haven't studied, say, all of them, but I'm confident that you won't see more than 8, because if they wanted that, we would have wrapped the drive-thru around to the third side of the building for more stacking.
And I should know what that number is. I mean, if they know their business, they should know what that is, right?
I think it's different based on every site, because I think every site pulls different traffic depending on the area. And is it inside of a shopping center? Is it a separate pad? I think you could really go down a rabbit hole on how to analyze that.
Well, how about locations that would be similar to this as a comparison?
I think the citizens of Airmont may be very different from the one I just built in Colonie, New York, in upstate. It's the exact same situation. We're in front of a strip center and a hotel situation, but I believe that your community is a little different than theirs. So I get where you're getting at. I'm confident to testify as the engineer that you're not going to have more than 8 cars in this drive-thru, and should there be more, they would ask the next person to come up. Again, I think the majority of our business still to this day is people coming into that cafe, sitting, having their food, and spending some time in there.
It's not just because of the proximity to the highway, it's not just the community that's going to be frequenting, patronizing the restaurant, so it's going to be a lot more of a thing, especially with the signage.
Well, we're not, I mean, signage isn't on, I agree that someone driving on the thruway that wants lunch may stop here, absolutely, but the same way that they would stop at any other brand that is parking compliant. I get the concern of traffic, but we are permitted use, so the zone and the master plan intended to contemplate this style of development with the traffic on this property particularly, and it's not just the Panera, but other restaurants would generate very similar traffic that you have out there. I don't think the drive-thru adds that big traffic demand that people are saying. It's a different style of traffic.
Okay.
Eve, do you think a traffic study is warranted?
I really haven't had the opportunity to look at traffic. I don't know if Adriana, did you read through it? You'd mentioned earlier that typically Adriana's office handles the traffic review. They have traffic consultants in-house.
We did not have our in-house consultants look at this. It wasn't requested. We had discussed during CDRC that we had a long back and forth conversation about the intersections that were studied.
I thought the end result was that since everything was already signalized,
that would be
there
my
wasn't going to be much of an issue.
that would be my conclusion. There are turn lanes accommodated for this intersection, and there are stoplights. I know personally, I actually
Devon, you mean?
onto Devon. There's a
From
a
Airmont
left turn
Road
from
onto
Airmont Road
Devon.
onto Devon.
So you can distinguish this site from the Bagel Boys site where they did the traffic study?
Sure, they're going right onto Airmont Road.
I just want it for the
Yeah.
record.
I actually use this intersection to get to Bagel Boys. To be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's much different
It's
because
safe
it's coming out onto Dearborn. Now,
Right.
if it was coming out onto Airmont or 59,
Right.
it would be much different.
Right.
From my perspective, I mean, how long has Friendly's been out of business now? been a while.
3
right?
years, 5 years?
Oh, more than that.
Much more than that, yeah?
As a
Probably
resident, my
15 years.
perspective
No,
is
not 15 years.
Yeah.
Well,
The
yeah.
kids went there when
I
they
took
were in
my
high
daughter there,
school.
she's
volume
only
of traffic
Exactly.
on that road,
Kids were there in high
going in
school.
and out of that,
I see
intersection.
7.
And that traffic
Well, I
is
haven't
no
been
longer
there.
there for families
He's-
and
he
hasn't
knows
been there
'cause he
for a
owns
number
it.
of years, so.
Right.
So that's why I think
He's
the
one of
traffic
them
study is
all
important, based
So-
on
Yeah,
real
but
data.
The
No.
signal wasn't there
It's 4
when,
years.
Friendly was built. The
Well, I have
signal.
problems with that signal,
You have problems with it?
well, I think it should be traffic actuated, it shouldn't be on a timer all hours of the day.
I would agree. I would agree
It's a
with that.
separate issue.
I would agree with
Yeah,
that.
it's a separate issue.
Yeah.
The one change that we could make or request is, I believe that your baseline analysis was if the friendlies were actually functioning currently, correct?
Of course, and I'll explain why we do that.
Uh,
Say,
But I'm sorry to interrupt
No,
you,
no,
but
please do.
if you were to look at this as a baseline without the friendlies functioning, that may give a more realistic view of the traffic that the community will see.
so we do
Right,
have a
it's the
no-build.
It's the change,
Yes, the
exactly.
delta to what's there today.
Right.
Alright, so I do have a traffic engineer with me, if you wanna really dive into the meat and potatoes of our
This is
traffic.
Airmont, of course we do.
So, and I'll just summarize again from,
59, it's a nightmare.
I totally understand, let me just summarize one more time, and then if you really want the meat and potatoes and the different numbers, my colleague and partner Joe will come up here and happily dive into it. I agree with you, everybody. Airmont Road has traffic on it, definitely. And some people say, yes, the friendlies have been closed, there is no traffic generated from that. The reason we have that as a baseline sometimes is because it could be turned on. If this whole project dies for countless different reasons, sale doesn't go through, whatever, some operator could just come in and turn the lights on. It might not be a friendlies, it could be Five Guys, whatever it is. There would be no grapple of the traffic. The traffic has been built into the roadway. When you do zoning and planning, please jump in if I'm speaking incorrectly, as a permitted use in the underlying zone, technically the traffic has been contemplated. Now, if I were to be doing a gas station and a super convenience store with a driveway on Airmont Road, and that driveway failed, I would then be required to mitigate it regardless if we permitted use or not. That's not the case here. We're keeping the existing driveways at the barn. The signal, although I agree is busy, is operating at good levels of service. I don't believe this Panera is going to negatively impact the surrounding. And I do believe Shlomo at one of the CRC is asked to start studying other different signalized intersections. This is not the kind of development that is going to be negatively impacting to a significant level all the other signals. If you were doing a Walmart or a Wegmans, all of a sudden your traffic study area gets much larger. Talking about a 4,400 square foot small cafe, and I agree with you. I don't want to take away that there is traffic here, but Airmont Road is one of the better fully laid out roads where you have the center turn lane, you have the signal at the barn. So, and what's nice even more is you have queuing. So should there be 3, 4, 5 cars waiting, and they are waiting for that green, there's plenty of room here and it doesn't impact anybody else. We also have a long driveway through it as well, should there be a catastrophe of traffic. So I don't think additional studies are going to show you that this Panera is impacting that, because the amount of traffic coming out of a 4,400 square foot cafe is a small percentage of what's actually flowing up and down Airmont, as well as going down to Route 59. I think a much larger development, you would start to see degradation in levels. But if that little summary wasn't enough, Joe can happily go into all the different numbers and the terms that people will be making.
I would disagree with one thing you said, and that's that if it was queuing on DeVaughn Avenue, that wouldn't be an issue. I think it would, because it would be on the other, you pointed to the wrong side of the road as to where the queuing would be. It would be to the bottom portion, the south side.
They would be queuing this way, right?
To
Going
leave, they would be
in.
queuing
To leave,
along.
they would be
Yeah,
queuing.
they're
So they would
waiting
come
Oh,
up.
to leave,
To wait at
yes.
the
Yeah.
signal, yeah.
I thought you
To
meant
wait at the
queuing to go in.
Oh, no, there
No,
wouldn't be
no.
any, you would never have a queuing problem
Yeah.
in because of the, you can always make a right turn on red and someone has a dedicated left at the signal to come in because you really just have the residential on the barn. This acts like your driveway for this development. So you're correct, but what I was saying from a site and traffic design standpoint, it's nice that you don't have any driveway for a little while for potential queuing. But again, if you want to know all the different numbers, left and right percentages, Joe's here.
If I may, my name is Joseph Steiger, prepared the traffic study. I think the one question I think you were asking was, the real situation is Friendly's is closed, it's not generating traffic. So when we take the difference of what the Panera will generate versus the Friendly's and then analyze it, well, that doesn't really reflect what's gonna happen tomorrow. So we can do a sensitivity analysis to show that. The way we did it, I think, is the fair and right way to do it. It takes an empty building, and well, what would happen if it would be reoccupied, as Josh said? Someone could go in there tomorrow, run that, not need to come to it before this board, could just occupy it and run it as a restaurant as it was in the past. And that's what we assumed when we did the pre and post. But I agree, we can take a look at that sensitivity analysis to say, okay, what happens tomorrow if Panera comes in not taking that credit, and then see what that analysis shows.
Am I correct in understanding that the change is one aspect of it, but then you give an ultimate grade of how the intersections will function?
Your level of service.
And so that is unlikely to change with this additional.
Correct, yes, and we'll take a look, and that's, you have existing volumes, we took the difference between the Friendlies and Panera. On top of that, what we'll take a look at is we won't take that credit for the Friendlies and just add the Panera traffic. And we'll run it to see if we get a degradation in the level of service.
Good. Does that sound good?
It's making a left-hand turn going to 59 at 4:30 in the afternoon. You're backed up to the railroad track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, the good thing is
My wife would be unhappy.
is that Panera's not really busy at 4:30. It's really at that later.
And she'd have no one to blame but you.
I know. I'm gonna get yelled at.
I think Joe just made a good point where our businesses launch.
Yeah, it's like-
And I agree, we were waiting in that left to come down here.
Oh yeah, good timing.
I'm not concerned about this in this case, but I'm wondering for future traffic studies, for instance, on this one, one of the days picked was a Saturday. Saturday here traffic is a lot lighter than it is on Sunday.
Sure.
That's something should be taken into account, so the village should have some input into this before the study's actually done.
I'm sorry, you're saying Sunday is busier than Saturday?
A lot to do.
Okay.
Religious reasons.
Right, yeah.
So, and totally understand there's local, culture and local reasons. The reason Saturday is studied is because it's generally studied as the busier peak hour for IT standards and other things.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
In most places, you're probably right.
Not anymore.
I do have a question about the agreement between the two owners. Will that agreement be in perpetuity, or that whatever new owner comes in with Howard Johnson is, and that agreement is?
I'm not an attorney, but I would assume that because just like any easement or deed or restriction or covenant on either property, if it needed to be lifted or modified, you would need the other property's consent for that. Same way that I have an easement to Rockland County Utilities, I can't just do what I want there without their approval. So it would be the same thing. If a new owner came to buy the Howard Johnson, wanted to scrape and rebuild and modify anything, they would need Panera's approval. Same way that you would treat the drainage easement or anything like that.
It'll be a recorded easement, so if anyone does a title search, it'll
pop up.
be found, yeah.
Okay, just remember that I get to make an engineering opinion.
Absolutely. Even it up.
Jump in there anytime.
You were a planner a little while ago, so.
But I have a little concern about what you just said, because you're saying if both property owners agreed to disband it, they could, and then that doesn't satisfy our requirements
Which requirement?
for the parking.
Where it goes in the parking condition.
But they would be going for a site plan
Thank
review,
you.
so they would be before us. We would
You're in control of this
we would
because
control that,
any
or you would
modifi-
control that.
any modification to that hotel, bigger building, different building, new parking, has to
It's a
make a
site
site plan
plan.
application. So
Why if they didn't do anything to the site? They just say, hey, we're part of this agreement and both parties agreed, yeah, let's
you're
terminate
violating
it.
the condition of approval. You have enforcement rights. That's why it becomes a condition of approval. We're not just promising you it. It's tied to paperwork.
Right, so even if they both agree to it, you can't terminate it.
Correct.
That's my job.
That's where you come in.
All right, can I get practical here for a second?
Sure.
We
One
still haven't
engineering,
touched signs yet.
No, this is
Depends.
process. We have a lengthy GML.
Mhm.
We have to do an NOI. We haven't heard from interested and involved agencies. We've heard from some, but we haven't heard from all. This is almost a rhetorical question, but is there anything that could be done seeker related other than
NOI.
NOI tonight?
Tonight, no. We will do the NOI as soon as they get us the,
And they could declare themselves lead agency.
yes, yes,
Right.
yeah.
That you can do.
Now, next step. For now, the intent was to have the planning board consider referring the matter with regard to, I know we haven't gotten to the signs yet, I get it, but all the
All
variances,
variances.
Right.
okay, related to subdivision, site plan, signage, et cetera, to the zoning board, for the next meeting of the zoning. But in light of the fact that we can't proceed on seeker, is there any utility
And sending them to ZBA.
in sending them to ZBA at the next meeting, as opposed to continuing the public hearings on all aspects of these multiple applications to the next planning board meeting
Right.
and have it in place so that if the planning board were in a position to make a negative declaration
Yeah.
at the next planning board meeting, we already have a notice prepared that could be thrown into the newspaper for the June ZBA meeting, which would be the,
Oh, that would be June, for zoning,
yes,
June 13th.
June 13th,
Tomorrow's my deadline for the newspaper if you were
if
gonna
you're
go-
doing May.
If you're doing May. That's,
I'm sorry, so we're
Yeah.
talking about GML, so everyone kind of, so if we wanna be in the June hearing for ZBA, tomorrow is the deadline?
No.
Sorry, okay.
no,
No,
no.
That'd be nice.
So I hear what you're saying, you haven't proceeded with the,
we're not in,
you're
We're
not
not
in
in
the
a
spot.
position
So with
to
the
refer.
zoning, if you were to, I'm sorry, I'm assuming, if you were to refer us to the zoning board, the earliest is June.
Yes,
Understood,
yes.
totally fair.
Well, and not only that, we don't
well,
have the
the
ability to
referral could be
refer,
made
Right.
but they're not,
potentially.
don't you need the paperwork to show that Rattan is giving him authorization to
Right.
Mhm.
speak on
Yeah,
his
we don't
behalf?
have all the.
Absolutely, but
So-
this gives them time,
Right.
it gives them time to straighten,
Yeah, there's a couple,
Right.
there are some
Right.
things that need to be straightened out per this meeting.
Correct.
Including seeker elements like the traffic, and I'll complete it, once the part one EIF is complete,
Mm-hmm.
I'll fill out a part two, send it back to you, and you can get, any kind of narrative completed in time for the next planning board meeting. We'll have,
Which is-
improved traffic.
The next planning board meeting is, May 23rd, Thursday.
Okay. You know, so, I mean, I'm just waiting on some things from the applicant, and I can move this quickly after that.
And then I have to go back to the agencies that didn't respond, that the Gmail said that we must get a comment letter from. And the one I did not send it to, because I didn't know to, was O&R. They need to comment, but I can quickly email, the drainage, the environmental health.
You did send to them?
Oh,
We
you
submitted
did.
as the applicant.
Oh, you did, yeah,
I think it
even
says
better.
that the applicant's responsible to send it.
Yes,
to
it
R&R.
did say that, you're right, the applicants, so if you get a response,
Okay, great. Did you
just
send
send
to Suez as well?
We've been in touch with them.
Okay.
that's right, it's in the application that you sent it to O&R, I forgot.
But, back up, Suzanne, you're saying that, in order to be on the 523, we have to notice tomorrow.
No.
Sorry.
That was if you were gonna be on the zoning
May.
board meeting for May 9th,
Which can't happen.
which cannot
Okay.
happen. Tomorrow, that's why I held off putting it in the newspaper. I held off mailing everything out. Newspaper would be tomorrow to be in by Tuesday, which is the last 10 days before the meeting.
Understood.
But we have time for June now.
Okay.
Move the process a little faster, would it be possible if the applicant so desired to do an informal in front of the ZBA just to get a sense what they're thinking about on these variances?
I'd be happy to do that if I'm allowed to.
Is that permitted?
I was just looking at Dan. I'm like, did we do
I've
that?
never heard of that.
I've never,
Never heard of
I don't
an
know that
informal
that-
in front of
I
zoning
mean,
You
ever.
can with variances.
I don't think that you can.
I don't know if you.
But I would like
I
to.
I
It would
defer.
make,
I
it would
defer to
make this whole
Dan
neg deck issue
What a
a
rebel.
lot easier.
Yeah, you can't get there
Because you have
before.
to do the environmental.
Correct, you can't go there.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
there's no way.
right.
and everything that they said would have to be repeated at the public hearing
Right.
the following month.
Yeah.
Everything, so that it becomes part of the record.
So either way, I have to come back on May 23rd.
You'll be back many times.
You'll be here May 23rd. That's the Thursday before Memorial Day.
No
Sorry.
problem.
And then the June zoning board meeting is on Thursday, June 13th. It's the second Tuesday of the month. That's at 8 o'clock, just so you know. Planning 7:30.
Zoning board will be shorter. No small variances. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything else we discussed before we open it to the public?
Should we talk about
At the
signs
sign.
first?
Uh,
It's kind of the same project. I don't know if we want to open it to the public now or after we talk about signs.
Is anyone here to speak on, is there anyone here? Anyone in the public that wants to talk about Airmont?
Two members.
Alright, then we'll wait. If you're gonna speak, we'd open it. If not, we'll wait.
Let's talk about signs.
So let's
Let's
talk
talk
about
about
signs.
signs.
Why are we
Oh gosh.
I'm excited.
So
Yeah.
excited about
So where's
signs.
Tony when you
see
need
the
him?
signs?
What?
Why are you giving
This is
us
the
that?
signage package that we provided.
Because
It'll
got
give
it
you the
here
colors.
somewhere.
Oh, you
I
do?
really
You
don't.
got everything
Okay.
ready.
Perfect.
Can I say I don't care about any of this stuff you do?
This will give you color elevations of the entire building. All of the
Okay.
signs.
Unless they're wood.
Again, I
I
got it
hate all
right here.
signs.
We all have it. Thank you. Everybody got it.
I think, well, they over.
I didn't put down, I listed just Thank you, because I took it from
Before
there.
you start talking about signs,
Sure.
can I make a, recommendation? For the next meeting, or even prior, I'll leave it up to you. Can you do a, responsive, like narrative to the county GMLs?
Certainly.
Okay, you know,
Yeah, respond and send it to you guys.
it'll just, I think, simplify things. It'll give you the time to, come up with your responses and rationale.
I'll put it in writing, but you're gonna do the same
Because
tonight.
just to make it clear for everyone, this is, from my recollection, the first time that I've seen in this village a disapproval on GML. That's number one. Number two, there are so many comments that'll need overrides as presently constituted with regard to the plans and the county's comments. And when you override a GML, you have to do it individually. It has to be by a supermajority vote of the board, and you have to give your rationale for why on each of them, you are, determining to make that override, and then all of that, has to be sent to, not prior to approval, but, after approval, assuming that that's where it goes, just for the sake of discussion, to the county so that they know why you acted the way you acted. So, just, if the applicant, can break it down the way that I'm suggesting, it may make that process easier, and it may give better context, to, the comments that were made by the county, and, you may even, want to, forward a copy or have a conversation prior to the May 23rd planning board meeting, with county planning to discuss with them, about their comments, and, see whether or not, you can provide them responses that would allow them to, override those comments, or provide a new letter which has.
I do have a question for you. So I know it's 4 pages and a lot of comments, but the only thing they disapproved was the sign. They recommended.
Right.
But there's the applicant shall, the applicant must, there's lots of comments like that.
So that's my question. I'll defer to you as the attorney. Other than the 3 comments that they say disapprove to the sign, which are correct, if the board would have to
They
override.
said 2 GMS, at least.
I didn't.
That was for
I
the
didn't-
zoning board.
I didn't, yeah, the zoning I did as an FYI.
But
I didn't want to
even-
confuse
even
the
for that.
situation.
It's the same exact letter. Just one's directed
Yeah,
to this
there's-
board and one's
yeah.
directed to the zoning
And
board.
one to the zoning board is actually shorter.
It is shorter.
So-
There's less involved.
So this is my my legal question for you, for procedural for the board. The first 3 that they disapprove, it's only 3 comments underneath the sign. The remainder of it, they approve with recommendations and comments. Would the remainder of this letter still require an override because they're not disapproving?
If they say shall or must, or any directive language, it needs an override.
Say that again?
It either needs an override or you need to comply with it.
So, just to speed things up for my client.
Just give me one example.
Sure. The first 3 on signs, I'm probably gonna seek to argue tonight and ask for the override that we'll discuss, we'll talk about. Every other comment that's on here associated with the recommendations for modification for the site plan as well as the subdivision will be able to provide. Or give them what they're looking for. So like, perfect example, a review must be completed by the New York State Thruway and required permits obtained. I'm not gonna need any permits, so that's my response. And on the override, it's just a general comment.
That's
So
why I'm suggesting that
Right.
you do that give and take
Respond to each one.
response.
Gotcha. What I guess more I was confirming was the only items that would require override would be the 3 associated with the sign. Or no, you're saying anything that says must and
Must and shall.
even though
Either-
they're approving it.
Yeah, because they're
Yes.
advisory.
That's the way a GMO.
I mean, are they gonna reduce this letter though? So like one of their comments says, there shall be no net increase in peak rate of discharge from the site at all design points.
So your response would be.
So we'll say, yes,
we will
Response
comply.
will be to submit your report,
Yeah,
Right.
and you
and,
will comply.
and are they just gonna eliminate that, or they're gonna
No.
say?
No,
They
it's
don't
just
need to.
for the record, you've addressed it.
In other words,
Once you demonstrate that, it's done, because you addressed the comment.
Okay. So we're gonna be here a few times, but,
Yes.
let's talk about signage, because I know the GML is very against it.
Before you
and-
talk about signage,
Sure.
who can tell us what a sign is? And what are we authorized to do in the village of Airmont? Let's start with that.
I'll defer to your planner.
What is a sign? A sign that says, wait here for your food, is that a sign?
That is directional.
So it's not a sign.
not,
So a sign is something that, I don't know, Lou
identifies the building.
Lou might be better at this
He's
than me.
already,
It
getting-
identifies, yeah, it identifies the
identifies
building,
the
It-
occupant of the building.
right,
The business.
the business itself.
A logo can also be a sign.
Correct.
What about the board with all the food stuff on it? Is that a sign?
That's not a
That's not a
sign.
sign.
Not a sign,
That's
okay.
not a sign.
So the majority of what is on this spreadsheet, those are directional signs. The CDRC has discussed this at length. So we've determined that the majority are actually directional signs. I believe that the county misinterpreted one of the wording of one of the variance requests that the applicant submitted and assumed incorrectly that they were proposing 18 wall signs.
Yeah, I saw some crazy
Yeah.
one.
Which
Which
they're
we're
not.
not.
6 per facade, right? Isn't that what it was?
But
Yes,
that's
but
a
we
perfect
are not.
example of getting in touch with them
Right, and just clarifying to them.
and
And I
having
can
them
get you the
redo
contact for that.
the comment letter.
So Adriana, are you saying then that the interpretation we have is the awnings, for example, that say delivery, catering, those are directional?
Those are directional.
But that was what the county was including as a sign?
Correct.
Got it.
Correct.
Right. I would say that so in my comment letter, I posed a few solutions to this. So the Panera Bread sign and the drive-through sign together are still within the allowable size of a wall sign. It's just the number of wall signs that is incompatible with the regulation. The other incompatibility is that they're proposing internally lit signs, which is not permitted per the Airmont code. So just so that we cover all of our bases, I'm wondering if it's possible to light the signs in any alternative way. I'm also wondering if it's possible to combine the Panera Bread and drive-through into one sign that is compliant with the size. That would reduce the number of signs per wall. Also, Lou, is drive-through directional or no?
I believe drive-through is directional.
Drive-through is directional.
But,
So that
but the
would-
logo is a sign.
So there would be
Okay.
two then, true signs,
This is-
too.
this is a
Panera Bread
sign.
and the logo.
This
And the
is-
logo.
This is a sign, yeah.
Right. So that's a very tiny sign.
But it's a sign.
But it is a sign.
We're talking about the wall logo sign?
The
Yeah.
logo is a
Yeah.
sign.
The logo is considered a sign.
It's considered a business identification
It's
sign.
business identification.
It's in Sutter, and most of the signs that been like, yeah, so there's the one right here.
So,
Oh, really?
Mhm.
say that again?
That's right. Sutter's is internally lit.
I mean, I don't want to talk about the other. I don't want to talk about the other
Those are all new.
businesses in town that have internally a lit
I don't know
sign.
how those-
I'd like you to hear my proposal and application, and then you guys can decide, obviously, how you want to proceed. So I agree with everything the planner just said. The ordinance, to a certain extent, the ordinance allows one sign per facade facing the roadway. Correct?
Yes.
That would be a total of 2 signs. One on the Vaughn Avenue sign, one on the Airmont sign.
Correct.
We have 2 on 3 facades and then 1 on the back. A total of 7 separate signs. My planning argument would be that of those 2 facade signs, you have a maximum area of 200 square feet total, 100 square foot each. The ordinance says 10% of facade area or 100 square feet. Our total square footage of facade areas would end up being over 100. So conservatively, you'd be a total of 200 square feet, 100 on each side. The signs that you have before you are pretty small in comparison to what that total maximum allowable will be. If you total the 7 signs that we have on those 4 facades, the amount is 152 square feet. So we're 48 square feet below total. Now, I'm not saying that still doesn't require variance and your recommendation for the zoning board and additional planning criteria proof. But the idea was to have a well-identified building, but also not have enormous signage. It's 4% of the entire facade area is this sign. Further, I think we met the intent of the ordinance because, yes, technically, I guess everyone's making the argument that Panera Bread is one sign, drive-through is another.
No,
But now we're saying also that drive-through is
Directional.
directional.
So it'll be a separate requirement.
It's not a sign.
No, it's
Not
not
a
a
sign.
requirement. It
Not a
doesn't need a
It's not a
permit.
sign.
Beautiful, she helped my argument.
Exactly.
right, you have only 4 signs, because the logo is a sign. So you have 3 that say Panera Bread and 1 that's a logo.
Well, that even helps my argument more, because if you take out the drive-through directional signage,
Right.
those
the
are
back.
11 square feet each, and we have 4 of those. So if you take out the 4 and you're remaining with the other 3, you end up having a little over 100 square feet. So we're less than half of the maximum allowable signage. Granted, they are spread around 4 facades instead of the 2. We're still under what would be allowed on here. We could have a much bigger beaming sign, we'll say, but we wanted to identify all 4 sides for various different reasons. So that would be our planning argument for you guys as well as the zoning board.
Well, with the size of the signs proposed, how visible it would be or readable it would be from the road?
I mean, from what I've seen of other Panera Breads, they are visible. I believe that the lighting helps that.
Of course.
Obviously. So the issue would be with the regulation surrounding the lighting,
What-
to be honest.
Can I
have
ask
a
you-
question about that? Where do
Yeah.
you see the regulation that says it can't be backlit?
Internally
It's
illuminated.
internally illuminated, I believe is the term.
No, what it says is sun shall not be illuminated by exposed tubes, bulbs, or similar, and there should be no exterior spotlighting or illumination.
Oh,
Doesn't say anything about internal backlighting. All the signs we have are internally lit.
They're
right.
really stealing my thunder tonight. I'm super excited.
Everyone's
Don't- just don't say
interpreting the sign
anything,
wrong.
don't- just wait.
We'll figure it out.
But I have a question about drive-through. If drive-through is directional, and it's on 3 sides of the building, where do I drive through?
It's a very good question.
It's gotta be directional.
There's
Keep driving till
actually,
you find it.
there's pavement markings too. Well, you don't have to describe your circulation to get to the drive-through, please, Josh.
So I know technically, I know technically we're calling them directional, which is beneficial to my application, so I appreciate that. The directional signs are on the actual property. So if you actually go to the 4th to last page, you'll see a general site plan, and highlighted are all the different signs that'll be on the property. As you enter from Devon Avenue, the first thing you'll see will be a real drive-through directional sign. That is a smaller, couple square feet at eye level, pointing you towards the drive-through lane. Additionally, like you just mentioned, there will be striping in the pavement that is an arrow as well as a drive-through. Next, you'll have clearance bar, preview board, and then the menu board. Exiting, you'll have a thank you, do not enter sign, but that's more of a MUTCD style traffic sign, and along with the drive-through waiting sign and rapid pickup signs. Those are just placards on a sign post. The point of the drive-through on all the sides is because Panera has not been known to be a drive-through. That's why.
So it's advertising the
Question
service.
has been
Correct. So whereas Wendy's and everyone else has always had a drive-through, you don't see Wendy's drive-through. You'll see the directionals directing you how to circulate the site. Because this is a new business operation for Panera, they are showing that this site has the drive-through component. That's the intent of why we have 4 sides of drive-through.
Dunkin' Donuts was never a drive-through, and there's no drive-through on the Dunkin' Donuts on 59.
That is very true,
It
sir.
doesn't exist.
It is very true.
So in this case, it's really not directional, because it's not giving any direction, it's really advertising.
That is
the-
correct.
I believe, correct. The intent of the 4 is advertising, but if it is clarified as directional, I won't argue that on the side.
The GML.
Correct.
Correct.
The-
You can misinterpret the code where it says
So Dan,
illuminated by
is
exposed
drive-through
tubes.
directional, or is it a
Tubes aren't
sign?
exposed, they're in a light box.
They're in the box.
It is a sign.
Right, they're all
Or don't we
ones,
care?
but not they're not in a light box.
Well, I think you do,
I
that
think we
would be
can.
considered part of the
It's
sign.
not directional, some kind of arrow or something telling you where to
I
go.
would think.
And another way to look at it, not for a third option, another part of my planning testimony is going to be,
Exactly.
Right.
if you were to truly draw a box around this as one building mounted sign, you're still underneath the allowable 100 square feet. So that was my argument when I speak to the GML who thought, you know, each one of these was a sign, like 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever their concern was. If you put a box around this entire thing, it would be underneath that 100 square feet. So I think that's the most conservative way to look at it. But these are separate letters, so it actually is much less. But we always take our dimensions from a rectangular box area.
That would seem to work.
What, boxing it in, or?
Yeah, because he's taking what, he has that amount of foot space.
So how would it look? I guess that.
Well, no, when I say box, I mean purely for calculation purposes. We will not put a box behind it. We think it looks good the way that it is, the white lettering on the darker brick that's behind it. So you won't have a box. What I meant was for the argument of calculation of the total area. Listen, the intent is to provide a very good looking building with various earth tones, glass, aluminum, and then white lettering. I don't think the site is oversigned at all. I don't think it's a beaming light or any kind of obnoxious. I think it blends well with the building.
One indirectly illuminated sign may be located on each building facade. It doesn't say anything about the area.
That is the
area
only
is a
sign,
function of the
sir,
one sign.
that
That's a separate,
we can draw.
yeah, that's
And I totally understand if you guys as well as the zoning board do not want that sign,
Yeah.
I'm happy to be able to drop that.
So here you
Yes,
Wait,
too, so the,
The one facing the
I don't know, is this,
That's not a front.
All of the three
I
face,
wanna know if
the
that's
two
even
face the road, the other one faces
from-
the railroad. For anyone coming down, southbound on
Face?
Airmont Road, will see this.
The recycling guy?
so
That's about
who
it.
is that, northern facade visible to?
People
actually?
driving southbound on Airmont.
I don't know that
No.
it is.
No,
Can you see that?
Do you have a picture?
I do not have a picture.
I don't know that that's, honestly, because 59, or Airmont Road's pretty wide at that point.
I don't
Coming
think people significantly like it.
I'm just saying, if you remove that one sign, you're compliant.
So I was just mentioning to Member Cohen that we have to remove the drive-through sign that's facing the hotel.
One sign
Mayor is looking for the three
Per
signs.
side.
per side.
Try.
get two signs.
But I thought you said drive-through was
Bless you.
directional.
We need a variance.
They went back to drive-through being an advertising.
You guys are killing it.
I was fine till I came here.
Okay,
Okay.
we have to determine that though, because that's
Correct.
What
important.
drive-through is
Easy way to do it.
directional.
Is the drive-through
A normal drive-through sign
on
is
the
directional.
facade,
Right,
is that directional?
and as he explained, it's more of an advertising thing than directional.
Okay,
Not
so
giving
now we're
it-
back to 2 signs per,
Per
It's not
side.
giving any direction.
Right.
right.
The ones in the parking lot with an arrow saying drive-through
I
are
wanna make sure
directional.
we're just all on the
So
same
a
page, because
drive-through
there's
on
been a
the
couple
building
different
is
conversations.
considered a sign.
Correct, okay.
It's an advertising.
So
No,
I
it's
would argue
advertising
that
a
these are not
service.
six
Correct.
different
It's not
signs.
advertising a business.
I would argue these are 3 different. I
But the
believe
code
we have 4
specifically says
signs.
one sign.
But
And I'll explain why,
Alright.
because
Alright. The
I
three
would have a
Panera Bread
I think
and
we're
the
having
one
a problem with the
drive-through.
definition first.
Of what?
Okay, so Lou is gonna
What do you
read
need
the definition.
of what?
We're all agreed.
A business identification sign is in a non-residential district, a building devoted entirely to one use or establishment. One indirectly illuminated sign may be located on the building facade facing the frontage street or streets, with a total sign area of each sign not to exceed 10% of the wall area of each building facade, but in no event more than 100 square feet.
So is the drive-through a sign on the facade?
It says one indirectly illuminated sign, so you have 2 signs. You have Panera Bread and you have drive-through.
So you're saying drive-through is a sign? Because it's used for advertising?
It's not an indirectly lit identification sign.
Well, what if you count the total square footage?
The square footage is a proponent of the one sign. Not,
Well-
if I put 50 signs on the building but they're in 6-inch letters, does that count?
Yeah.
that's kind of my argument is that if you were to, I get it, it's 2 different lettering. But if you box this up as one sign, you're still underneath the 100 square foot requirement. I still need a variance because whether it's 6 signs or 4 signs, I need a variance because I'm only allowed 2. I think the planning argument that we're trying to make for you is
Which one?
that a lot more signage total is allowed. And we weren't trying to have this big beaming sign on one of the 2 facades facing the road. We wanted to identify all 4 sides. And because the drive-through is a new portion of our business, that's why we wanted to have all 4 sides.
So Lou, if he put a thin 1/4-inch border around it, then it would be okay.
It'd be one sign.
That's my argument, is that
You're stretching it, but yeah.
because
Yeah,
if that's
one
two
sign.
signs, would you say that each one of these letters is a sign? Because they are separate.
It's one name, and if you look at the height requirements, it's one set of wording. So
And
does
for
that mean that
procedural-
does that mean that both signs are gonna fit into the vertical limit for height?
The vertical limit.
I think
What
so.
is the-
Well, what's the vertical limit?
Yeah, I was just say, what's the
The
vertical?
vertical dimension of all business identification signs shall not exceed 2.5 feet.
Oh,
That's,
this is, Panera's 20 inches.
So no, it would be separate then, otherwise you would need that relief. And then, just correct me from procedural standpoint. You guys don't vote on the variance, but you have comments on it to make a referral to the zoning board for the sign, is that correct?
They determine if there's an impact to the community based on the site plan.
Gotcha, so that kind of goes back right to what I was talking about before, that you're allowed 2 signs up to 200 square feet. I agree, 4, 6, however we wanna cut that cookie up regarding the different kind of signs. That the intent was, and when the sign company Mandeville worked with Panera in our office, we said it will be incredibly difficult if your 6 signs exceed 200 square feet. Because in our eyes, the intent of the ordinance contemplated this amount of total square footage, and we're under it at 150 something and change. So we could theoretically even have bigger signs on those 2 facades. We think it blends well. It's 3 to 4% of the total facade area, so you don't have a big booming sign. We think it looks nice on the overall. If the board has a major concern with this sign right here, I'm happy to get rid of it. The idea for the other 3, and I do understand that there is some vegetation along the railroad that's to the north of us, but as you are driving down Airmont Road and you come right here, you're looking at the side of the building. That was the intent to sign that
You're
million.
not looking at the roads.
There's a
That's
friendly sign on that side as well.
Can you not see, you can't see the front of the building?
Thank you.
can kind
My
of see
associate
on the
Mike
side?
just showed a picture of why the friendlies have a sign. So if you're driving the southbound direction, you can pass that along, you will end up seeing it. I agree. All the way down Airmont, you will not see it. But as you come over from the thruway, you're going to look at that elevation.
right before you step limit to the stoplight.
One there and one in the front.
Then you'll see it even more.
I got plenty of time to stop for the sandwich.
Do we get a
Yeah, do we have to spend it on the black card?
I believe that friendly sign is much bigger.
yeah,
I wanna
Let's play
see
the
this
bigger
picture.
contest.
that's where it
Yeah.
Listen, Panera wants a modern, good-looking cafe. They don't want this big beaming light coming. They want it to be a nice, higher-end cafe. They don't want it to be a high turnover. They want you to feel comfortable to come in. That's why the signs package was delivered. It's a little white against what the entire facade is earth tones. That's why it's
How
developed.
much over were you on the height of the limit?
I don't think we're over on the height at all.
Nope.
No.
No, only if they combine.
If you were to combine
Consider
them.
as one sign.
You said it was
2.5 feet.
2.5 feet. We would be closer to 3 feet. But again, I still need the same.
But it would
variance.
still
Either way,
be
he
a
needs a
variance.
variance.
That's
Either
a
way, he's
variance
gonna get a
and all.
variance, so
That's
why
not
don't
what
get the
Mr.
correct
Collins
variance?
said. Yeah. Either way you slice this, I either have 4 signs or I have 6 signs or 2 is allowed.
But it would be one less variance if we move the drive-through up 6 inches.
Half of the, what's that?
Still-
saying?
6 of one, half
Six
of
of
the
one,
other.
yeah.
If he's going for 11 variances, wanna make it 12.
No, I lost
ruin
the
the aesthetic of the building, just
lost
the
it.
one
Right.
variance.
Oh,
Well,
you,
this is not a Chuck E.
you're
Cheese,
using.
they're building,
He's
you
checking
know.
out your texts.
Google Earth.
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh.
Snooping.
So that's what his wife looks like.
Wait. What direction am I going? Okay, now I'm at the.
Other than the number of signs and the technicality, are there any concerns or questions on
Oh,
the
God.
sign package related to the building?
Oh,
I get we'll get into the technicality, but are there any concerns from board members of how it's laid out and how it looks?
You're really putting drive-through up here so people know, bless
Bless
you,
you.
that
God bless
drive-through's a
you.
new thing for Panera.
Correct.
Well, in 5 years it won't be a new thing.
Signage packages change a lot for corporate companies.
Right.
Look at Wendy's signs over the last 10, 15 years. It used to be Dave's Famous, then it's
Oh,
Wendy's, there used to be
Dunkin'
Curl.
Donuts is just Dunkin'.
Yeah, now it's
Yeah,
just
that's
Dunkin'.
true.
Signage package for corporate standards change all the time as business
You're right.
changes. I wouldn't be shocked if some point you see, you know,
Fly through.
yeah. as the business changes, maybe more online ordering, you may see signage associated
Drone
with that.
delivery.
Yeah, drone
Drone
pickup.
delivery.
Should we get a drone port on the roof?
Yeah, or it could just become
Get a drone port on the roof.
app-friendly store, Uber spaces,
They have
as business changes,
No.
you'll see
Oh,
different
yeah.
signage patterns.
Right now, there are tractor trailers, there are
Right,
the
yeah.
dump trucks that are parked in that lot. Everything is better than what's happening right now.
So, that's the other point of
Yeah,
intent.
okay. I know you're.
I'm working for a Panera corporate. A lot of times I work with developers who are just looking to maximize the yield of the property. Panera wants the site to look nice. Landscaping, lighting, pedestrian, signage, millions of dollars into a new building. They could have just moved into the existing Friendlies. They want this to be a premier site. So I want you to know wholeheartedly as the Quilty store, they want this to be as nice looking and brand new as possible. And although we're not even changing some of the parking area, they're gonna end up coming through and milling and overlaying so it looks and it pops. You know, brand new white striping. They want it to look like a brand new store. The reason I bring that up is that it goes back to the
To improve from what it is.
correct.
So it's there, you can see it.
Say again?
That's not the sole criteria for approving something.
Yeah,
They
so,
they actually have two signs on the Airmont Road facade.
That was definitely pre-zoned.
You know what, I'm gonna go over tomorrow and write a violation on that.
Yeah, the abandoned building.
Oh, you should have said it while the owner was
He's
here.
over there.
here, he's
Oh,
over
oh,
there.
okay.
He's right there.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
You can declare lead agency.
Well, let me just
Well,
open it up to the public first.
yeah, open it up. to-
So I'd like to open it up to the public for comment on Panera Bread application that's before you. Okay, so I want to make a motion to continue the public hearing.
To a date and time certain, so May 23rd, 2019, at 7:30 p.m. Airmont Village Hall.
That's the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
And just to be clear, it's on all aspects of all the applications.
Yeah, that too. All right, what about seeker?
Motion to declare yourselves
Okay.
lead agency, for the
Now, we can't make a
purposes.
determination yet,
No.
but I will make a motion to declare the planning board lead agency for seeker.
And to authorize the planner to circulate an NOI
For an unlisted
That
action.
too.
as an unlisted action. So that's the second
Then a
motion.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Okay.
And we can't refer, just correct me, to the zoning
Not at
until,
this point. Have no authority to do it. So on this matter, we're done. Tuesday of next week, there's the Rockland County Planning Federation annual dinner. And I know the gentleman who's being honored for, I don't know the exact title, but it's basically someone who has devoted a significant portion of their life to planning-related issues. And that person is my father, so I'd be very happy to see you all there. It's at Patriot Hills, I think it starts at 7 p.m. And you coordinate that with Suzanne. You didn't know about that?
Oh, I knew about it.
Oh,
I brought it up at the last meeting and gave everybody to save the dates. It's on there. And I have another copy in there as
I
well.
missed it, what happened?
The planning meeting.
The planning meeting. And it's to save the dates for the training. It's also on there.
yes, and you will get credits, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Credits for going to dinner.
Yes.
That's a lunch.
Not just one credit.
Oh, one credit. Make it 2 and it'll go.
We are going to have a very full planning board meeting next month.
What else is on the planning board next month?
well, besides Panera, we have Ascension Cemetery coming back. They got their variances from the ZBA, so they're going to be coming back for final approval. We have 48 South Airmont Road coming for a
Tree variance.
the tree. It's a tree plan. It's really residential, but because they're taking down a certain number of trees and building in the back, it has to come to planning because our tree law only allows for 3 trees, and it's, don't quote me on the number, it's something like
27.
27 besides the 13 they already took down.
Correct.
So that's on the agenda. And there is something at Airmont Trust, Claudio's property, where they want to put in a wrestling school and an automotive refurbishment for high-end
Classic cars.
classic car type things.
So how are we gonna get through those 4?
We'll see at midnight.
You're the chairman.
Well,
You'll
we
do.
did constitute way back when that 11 o'clock is the bewitching hour, and if the application isn't heard, it would be heard at the next meeting. I believe those that are here now, the continued public hearing goes first. Am I correct, Dan? Correct, Dan?
Yeah, none of the other ones are public hearings?
Yeah. They've been, well, they will be. I didn't send out the advertisement yet.
But this is a continuing.
This is continued, so this would definitely be on first.
Do you keep these, or do you want to?
If you want me to hold them so you don't have to carry them back here,
Are you changing them?
Possibly.
you can. So we have a very full plate.
Very excited.
Sounds like fun.
Because I honestly thought Panera was going to be going to zoning. I didn't expect to have the
I
three
did too.
and Panera.
Do you want them?
They
No,
still
no,
have
that's
subdivision
mine.
on it.
Do not give
Oh.
them. That's my record copy. That's
Oh,
what
you
I said.
didn't, I thought you only did the other thing.
No, that is mine.
Oh, anything else we're gonna discuss?
No, just a reminder to look at, for those who are not certified yet, you do need to get recertified, you need to get certified. The new members have, I think it's 14 months to do so, but sessions 1 and 3 are typically only offered in the spring. So if you can, try to make those. Session 2 is offered in the spring and the fall. For those who are already certified, to keep your certification, a reminder, you have to take the session 2 every 2 years, and everybody is required to take 4 hours of training per calendar year.
And if I can add to that, if anyone who was appointed or reappointed, make certain that you sign your oath, that you go into,
You have to come during business hours when there's a
come
notary
during
here.
business hours and sign your oath of office.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do it within 30 days of your appointment, which is actually getting pretty close,
Yes.
your spot is abandoned.
Okay.
Okay.
What if you were here but the notary wasn't?
Yes.
Doesn't
You know
count.
why?
Doesn't count. Okay, anything else?
No.
I'm going for it.
Just a general question. Is there a
Anything else for anybody?
Just a general question, do we have a process, anything documented, a procedure in terms of cutoff dates for providing material that we
Yep.
need to be knowledgeable of before a meeting? Because we just get a ton of material the day of or before, and can we start following some sort of a process so that we have, a month, 2 weeks, something?
Well, when do you want to?
Could you
I
send
can't keep up
CBRC
with
minutes?
Yes, I give them in your packets.
To-
Oh, you
to
want
the board?
CBRC minutes?
No, I'm getting
Oh.
emails the
Oh,
day
oh,
of.
you mean like
If I have
the-
For, like,
something
the
I can't
memos
The
do.
comment letters. I cannot control the agencies.
No, but we can set a deadline when the material has to be
I
in.
can ask them. They have 30 days to respond from when I mail it out. And they typically respond
On the
What
30th.
day?
on the 30th day. I'm not kidding you.
Right.
I
But
can
there has to be
request
some
it.
process where we would then not hear that. Because how can I mean, I have a full-time job.
I understand
can't
that.
read this material and digest it and be ready to discuss it.
I can put a requested date in it. I mean, it's actually on the form when the meeting is. They are aware of when the meeting is. And I actually changed the submission dates to be 5 weeks when I mail it out rather than 4, so it isn't cutting it close. But I can request it or start calling the week before. That's the best I can do. Okay?
Yeah, it is kind of painful.
Otherwise, would CDRC minutes be helpful if you could see
I don't know that they need to see CDRC minutes. I
to
don't think
be
that's
up on
good.
the discussion? No, that like
No, I don't
what
think
is it
that's-
that is it the
No, he's talking about
the
like your letter
professional
came
comments,
yesterday.
like our letters?
Yeah, your
Yeah.
letters came in.
Our
Right.
letters came in,
I
right.
mean, we could send
Because
you
depend,
drafts,
well, depending on,
but we need to take into account the.
Well, yeah,
I mean, I
we're
did-
waiting
Well.
for responses as well, but
Mhm.
They
sometimes
use
it's just not
yeah.
enough time from the time the submission is made,
So
even
I'm
though.
not pointing, I'm not saying it's
No, but
anyone,
I'm
just
saying for,
we need to
for
back it up
everyone,
for everyone.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
we can
everyone.
figure
Because
it
they
out.
use the letters that we get from the agencies as well when
Right.
they look at their comments. And, I mean, this
We
time
got
we
the
didn't.
GML yesterday.
Yeah, and
No, I
that's,
understand.
usually I get it the same day. I mean, last planning board meeting, I got it a half an hour before the meeting.
Yeah.
They faxed it through.
I guess that's kind of my point, like how can we be reasonably
I can
expected
try to maybe call, it's another process for me. I can try to call a week before. I mean, I don't know what else to
I
do.
don't think that's not what I'm
Okay.
striving for, really. I mean,
I fill out a GML form, it has the date that I mail it out on it, and they see the date stamp of when the plans came in, and it has the meeting date. And it lists everybody that I send it to, it has a description of what we're looking for. And I still didn't get 3 or 4 for tonight. So, that's another issue.
We can try and send, I can't speak for Eve, but I can try and send a draft, a watermarked draft memo earlier.
but it sounds like to me,
They need
it's like
the,
these folks are on the agenda for a specific meeting. That now we have a deadline that we
Right.
may or may not be able to make
Right.
because of other
right, and I have to send out the public hearing notice at least 20-something days to get in the
But we don't
paper,
put people on
10
the agenda until we
days.
have everything else in place.
But
That-
I get the plans. The plans are, and the application is what's required of the applicant. And their date stamped in, and that's what I mail out. And then there's a 30-day window for agency and municipality comments for them to respond. Okay, but when it comes to some of the letters, it's when they respond.
Right.
The only way you could do it is to delay the applicant by 30 more days. Then you're sure you get them, because you know you're
Yeah,
gonna get
I
them the
mean,
last minute.
that's the alternative, but see, the problem with that is, I'm assuming I'm gonna get those letters within 30 days. I have to do a public hearing notice, do mailings, and put it in the newspaper, and that's halfway in between before the next meeting. So if the meeting, if they mailed it out on the 1st and the meeting's the 31st, I have to get everything out before the 14th or the 15th, so that it's in the newspaper at least 10 days before. How do I know if I'm not gonna get it? And it's advertised that there's a public hearing.
Right.
We still have to.
And let's use what happened on this application this week as an example. We
Yeah.
had to make a decision. We don't know what you guys are gonna do. We don't know whether or not you're gonna be in a position to adopt seeker. And we wanna, be accommodating to the applicant. Suzanne had the,
Public hearing.
public hearing notice all ready to go on Wednesday?
Yeah.
Is
Actually,
yesterday?
Monday.
Monday?
And I
Okay.
had him bring me the envelopes today, so that if you
Right.
did, I could mail it out tomorrow, but I
So-
didn't know.
I talked to Ira, their attorney, I looked at various correspondence, like yesterday the GML. I started to, question whether or not anything practically could be done. So Suzanne checked, when is the absolute last day that I can send this in to get them on a ZBA agenda for the May meeting? And she found out it's tomorrow. I said, hold off, let's find out what goes on tonight.
Mhm.
Had she sent it out before, the meeting notice would have been published. The ZBA, which I don't think has anything else on the agenda.
It does. It does.
Okay. But the
Our
ZBA would have had to have opened the public hearing, close the public hearing, actually not even close the public hearing. They couldn't have opened the public hearing. They would have had to have said, we're gonna have to, we're unable to do anything on this. This hasn't been properly referred to us. It shouldn't have been set. Seeker hasn't been done, and it probably would have delayed in the end.
And there's a cost to the applicant for everything that I do in the newspaper, which is rather costly, and theirs is a large advertisement, so it would be very costly with the number of variances. I mean, I can give you the plans way ahead, but you won't have any of the letters. If that will help you, I can do that. I try to do it the week before. I apologize, last week I was out. But I could do the plans 2 weeks before if you prefer, but there will be no agency letters, very few, if any.
I guess it's just the nature of the process that, there's voluminous amounts of material that I need to read.
I understand.
And
But if it'll help that you have the plans a week earlier, I'll do a week earlier, and then you just have to read the correspondence as they come in. That's why I try to use the email, so at least you get it until you get the hard copy. That's another thing, we're supposed to be using the village email. I know some people are having issues with it. I can always send a courtesy copy to your personal email, but you are responsible for cleaning out the village email because you're taking space on the server.
Well,
So-
we're not responsible until we,
I
So we
understand,
get
Dennis,
on.
your situation's different, you're new to the board, okay? But, we have to make sure we're doing that, especially
The
for
other way to
litigation
get
issues.
to what you're talking about is to delay the applicant by 30 days after you get the deadline for the letters to come back.
Yeah, I
Make
mean,
sure
then,
you got
then
'em.
it, then it has to be like almost a 60-day process for
Right.
people to get on to an agenda. That's what you're looking at.
what if we met every 40 days instead of every 30 days? Would that work?
There'll still be delays of this.
Let me put it this way.
If we 40
I
days, that
would
would be
like to-
such an irregular schedule.
Well, yeah, and you have to remember that this is used as a courtroom
What does that even look like?
twice a month, the first and the third Thursdays, and I'm using it the second and the fourth for zoning and planning, and then I'm using it on another night for architectural and another day for
For every
CDRC.
reaction,
There's
there's
4
an
meetings a
equal
month.
and opposite reaction, okay? You start doing that, then applicants are gonna start to get upset.
Right.
The-
To grind to a halt.
we have no control over, adjoining, interested, or permitting agencies whatsoever. Suzanne luckily has a very good relationship with county planning, so they usually come through, but even with that, they usually come through at the last second. And if you read the GMLs for